Okay, so let me set this study in context. Okay, so as you know, we are all interested in the cross-section of stock returns. And then we had the whole debate sparked by Thomas Wrench, we all know that. I was really surprised that we would construct factors based on ex post notions of what predicts returns in the cross-section. And then we just do a long, short thing and then interpret it as distress. So I was very surprised that the profession accepted it so readily, but that's okay. Then we had a long literature on anomalies and cross-section predictability using so many variables in the mid-90s and the early 2000s, sparked no doubt by the momentum paper and so on and so forth. And then came a series of papers that suggested to us that this stuff may not be what it seems. So there was a line of literature started by Harvey and then Julius Goyal-Serrata contributed to it, which said basically that, okay, let me now not go into technicalities, I'm going to summarize it in one line. Basically they said like, when you have a large number of anomalies, some would be significant out of pure chance, and the technicalities are just whether it's consistent with chance, and they argue it was that artificial. Andrew Chen has an excellent paper in the Journal of Finance, as good as Julius Goyal-Serrata, where he simply says like, look, the p-stats in the extremes are too high, and then it cannot be generated by any reasonable distribution. If you have extremes at 6 and 7 in the cross-section, then that's not likely due to any sort of chance. They're just too high. Someone's on some of these anomalies. That leaves us with the notion that these anomalies with t-stats are 4 weighted in stack. We'll come to that in a bit. And then Jeffrey Pontiff and McLean had an excellent paper and won awards with McLean, where he said basically that, we just find them they're genuine and then they're arbitraged away, so after they discover they're going to go away. And in fact, I was looking at these factors, the Farmer 5 factors, which are supposedly risk factors. And I found that basically 4 out of the 5 factors are no longer significant. The only thing that works these days is the investment anomaly, the CMA, conservative minus aggressive. Everything else, the factors don't have a premium in the last 25 years, which is the same as the momentum study. In other words, the momentum study spanned 25 years. If you simply go back to the past 25 years and look for the simple premium on the Farmer 2015 factors, 4 out of the 5 factors do not produce a significant premium over the last 25 years. A risk factor that does not produce a premium is not a risk factor. There's no point in trying APT or ICAPM, right? Momentum and reversals don't work. If you simply do a momentum past 25 years, it doesn't work. Monthly reversals, they don't work either. So right after they're discovered, they seem to have gone away consistent with the premium of what was going on. So that leaves us with the issue of how to interpret all these studies in a way that sort of makes a sense in finance literature in terms of the anomalies, like where we stand and what we can take away. So the reason I chose Amit, Andrew, and Jeffrey was just because simply that the quality of the work is outstanding, and I think that they would have something useful to say, and they don't all take the same perspective. They take different perspectives on this. So that's why their perspectives are so good.
So I'm going to talk about whatever my perspective is. As Subra said, that's the idea of this debate. It is a debate. So you will see me disagreeing probably a little bit with Andrew, a little bit with Jeffrey, with Jeff. I think it goes really without saying, but I do want to say it aloud. I'm not trying to be politically correct, but I really have a great respect for what Jeff has done in this field and what Andrew has done in this field. If I disagree and if I sound like too harsh, it is not personal, it is a professional disagreement. Having said that, you will see, no, I'm not actually trying to make a joke. And when I make a joke, this was not a joke. Having said that, I think that by the end, we will have lots of agreement. It will not be a debate. That's what I think. I will have, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I have to go back here because the clicker thing is not working. I think my thing is going to be talking about, before we engage in the debate, I think we have to agree on the language. I think a lot of the debate that we have is because we don't agree on what we are talking about. We use these words all of us think that we understand what these words mean, but I think we don't. There's a confusion regarding the usage of these words. So the first and the main thing I want to do is to set the stage. Let us define the words, okay, and then have a debate. I'm going to have a definition for some of these words that I have here. You may not agree with my definition, but I think you'll have to agree with me that we need a common language. If you're going to use a word in one way, I'm going to use a word in another way, then we can just keep talking and we will not reach any, like even agree to disagree kind of a consensus, right? So there are many words which are used. I think the title of the session is Return Anomalies, P-hacking debate, but lots of people use like words interchangeably. They use words like replication, they use words like robustness, P-hacking, publication bias, multiple testing. And in many people's minds, these words are interchangeable, they are synonyms. And I'm going to try to highlight, to me, they are not synonyms. Okay? Let me tell you what I think these words are, and then we can decide, well, what are we debating about? Are we debating about replication, or are we debating about p-hacking? Okay, right now, I don't know. I don't know, because Subra didn't tell us. Right? And so that's, I think, my first thing. Because I have limited time, there's some things, it is a polemic. I'm not going to talk about some of the things which are dear to my heart, but I don't have time in sample versus non-sample. I'm not going to talk about that. When there is a missed risk factor, omitted risk factors, or behavioral is again something which all these questions are important, but I'm not going to talk about that. Let's start with definition. Replication. To me, I will define the replication as you cannot replicate what the original author said he did in exactly the way he said he did. If you cannot do that, that's a replication. Okay, that's the way, my definition of a replication. Is there a replication problem the way I have defined replication? I don't know. You can go to Andrew Chen's website. He has really good website. I'm sure all of you use open source asset pricing. He says, and I believe him, that if you replicate the authors exactly the way you did it, you can replicate practically everything. Okay? Now, of course, we also know there are some well-publicized cases in which there were replication problems. I don't have to relitigate those types of things and so on. So, I would say, if we are talking about, is there a replication crisis in finance? There are titles of papers which I've cited here which use this word replication crisis. I'm going to say there is no replication crisis in finance. Okay? Yes, there are some problems here and there, but finance, everybody can try to do what I do using respect CompuStat. Yes, sometimes I'll make mistake, sometimes those mistakes will come to light, but overall, I don't. If my fellow panelists are going to say that there is no replication crisis in finance, I agree. There is no replication crisis in finance, as the way I have defined replication crisis. Is there any other problem? Is there a robustness problem in finance? Like the robustness problem is not the replication, it is, well, you change the experimental design a little bit. Instead of equal weighted, value weighted portfolios, NYSE make points, etc. Or whatever, right? Maybe you use slightly different sample period, okay? Maybe you go back to this. And is that a problem? Yes, that probably is a problem. I've cited a few studies here, SM Binder's work and others, like in which they actually come up with, like, if you do 100 different empirical choices, you can get 100 different estimates of, for example, the value. That's a robustness issue. Is that a problem? I don't know if that's a problem, because problem is a big word, but robustness issues, I think, are common. So no replication problem, but robustness, I think, is an issue, if you will, in finance. P-hacking and publication bias. Is that common in finance? I think so. Okay, again, but before, sorry, let me define what I mean by p-hacking. P-hacking is researchers try many different things, report only the things which is favorable to their narrative. Okay, publication bias is only statistically significant results get reported in the Journal of Finance, right? Does that happen in finance? Of course it happens in finance. Of course, right? I mean, you don't have to debate about that. Of course that happens. That's a fact of life. And that's not specific to finance, that's specific to many different things. Is there a problem? That I don't know. It's a fact of life. Some facts of life are not a problem. Is it a problem? I don't think it's a problem. So the smarter people than me have opined on this. So there is a JP article by Casey. I recommend you guys to read that. For example, you might say, oh, you know, the journals publish only the results with t-stat of 2. Maybe we should be publishing results with t-stat of 1 or 0.5. And he says, no, that doesn't make any sense. There is a reason why we do not have a journal of no results. And the reason for that is that time is limited, resources are limited. You cannot have those kinds of journals. So you know, it's empty talk to say, oh, we should be publishing all the results, whether they're significant or not. That's just not going to happen. So, you know, stop watching about that, right? Also, Subra, okay? I'm going to, so maybe Subra believes there is a p-hacking problem. I don't know what he believes, okay? But fine. I'm going to put words into his mouth, okay? Let's say he believes this p-hacking is a problem. I'm going to use something that he wrote a few years ago, on which he said that there is a problem with incentives versus cheap talk. All of us, in some sense, are storytellers. We want to tell a narrative. In building a narrative, of course we are going to, I'm not talking about cheating, but obviously you want to try to present the results which paint your narrative in the way you want to paint the narrative. That's just, all of us do that. If you think you don't do that, you have not written an empirical paper or published a paper in your life. I bet you. Right? If you think, no, I don't do that. Come on, right? So is that p-hacking? I mean, the word is like derogatory a little bit, right? So ignore the p-hacking kind of word, but do all of us kind of engage in trying to present the results which are favorable to our narrative? Yes, we do. Do journals like to publish significant results? Yes, they do. Because, well, that's just a fact of life. Okay. Is it a problem? I don't know. Okay. Now, Jeff, of course, has this great paper, right, in which he shows, well, after the results get published, whatever, 30-40%, I forget, whatever the number was, some of the results go away, right? That's a great paper. But to me, that's neither here nor there for today's debate. Right? If after the result gets published, half of that goes away, well, that's not a problem for replication and or robustness. That's a very important thing to know for us financial economists as to, well, people acted on this new information and that went away, but that's not a problem. Okay? So, therefore, I classify this as something which fits none of the categories of a p-hacking debate. Okay? So far, I think I've said that to me right now, it seems like there's no problem. Like, you know, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know. Okay? But now I think maybe we'll start disagreeing a little bit. Maybe I'll start disagreeing a little bit more with Andrew now. Okay? And this becomes now a statistical thing. Okay, so now I have to be a little bit technical. I won't be too technical because I don't remember all the technical details anyway myself. But now we are talking about statistics. We all understand simple, basic statistics. It is simple. We do hypothesis testing and so on. Right? The statistical theory for that has been developed for centuries. We all understand that. Typically, we say we need a hurdle of 2. Okay. Now, we all understand also that just having a t-statistic of 2 has never been sufficient to get a GF publication. You need some story, you need some robustness checks, something you need, right? Nobody has ever published a paper just because you had a t-statistic of 2. Right? That's correct, right? That's correct, right? Also, we understand there's a debate between type 1 and type 2 errors. I'm not telling you that. All of you guys know and understand. Okay, so I'm going to take that statistical theory as needed. I'm going to take that statistics as needed. I have a in slightly smaller font thing because sometimes I get asked. Maybe I should say something you can read. It's a cheap shot against some people. I don't think they're here, so it doesn't matter. Some theory people, it doesn't matter. Now. I'm going to stay again true to this statistical testing. I need statistical testing. Because I don't have anything which is 2 plus 2 equals 4. I need statistical. I have a theory, I need to test it, I need statistical testing. Okay, so I'm going to stay clean and clear about statistical testing. Now the thing is, now we come to the fact that many of us As a profession, not just me. It's not me I'm doing 1,000 tests. I'm doing only one test, but everyone here is doing a test. Collectively, we are doing thousands of tests. Okay? So it's not an indictment on me. I'm not blaming myself or you or anybody. All of us collectively are doing thousands of tests. If we are going to do that, I don't know. It's kind of obvious to me that if you want to control a type 1 kind of an error, you have to raise the hurdle from 2. If you care about controlling type 1 error, if you don't care about controlling type 1 error, then of course you stay with 2. Yeah, you decide. I don't know. Okay? So it may still be. Okay? I'm just making conceptual point. Whatever the new hurdle is, maybe all the published findings still clear the new hurdle. But I think you have to agree with me that we need a higher hurdle. To me, that seems like a self-evident fact. I know Andrew is already shaking his head. So, right? So you guys are in for a treat. That's what you came for, right? To see this debate. So you'll have this debate. Andrew is going to disagree. Disagree. So all I'm saying is, even if there was no replication issue, even if there was no robustness issue, no publication bias, no p-hacking, nothing like that, I think this statistical problem still remains. Okay? Now, if the statistical problem remains, now, I of course I don't know what Andrew is going to say, so I'm going to so it's a little good that I went to stick to I know. If somebody wants to argue, no, we don't need to raise the hurdle from 2 to something higher, even if thousands of us are doing the test, then I don't know. To me, that data generating process sounds like, in standard statistics, you have a distribution of the statistic under the null, whatever it looks like, standards, normal, and so on. If you're going to argue that even if you have thousands of tests and you don't need to raise the hurdle, I don't know, that data generating process under the null seems very weird to me. Some people might even claim. Some people, I don't know who, some people might claim that actually you need to lower the hurdle from 2. Hey, 2 is too high. It should be only 1.6, 1.7. After all, right? I just said, hey, publish a paper in JF. You don't need only 2, you need to do so many other things. All of us know the pain that you have to go through to get a JF publication. If you have gone through all the pain, all the smart people, you don't need a 2. You need only 1.6. Okay? Well, to me, that's fine. If as a profession we all decide, oh, you have a great story, beautiful story. Okay? You need only 1.6 because you have a beautiful story. You have a beautiful model. 1.6 is fine. That's fine. Let's decide that as a profession. But if we have not decided that, to lower the hurdle, to me, I don't know, and who's going to decide this is a beautiful story? Anyway, the point is, I don't think this is going to fly. Now, this is complicated thing, right? I'm claiming that the hurdle needs to be raised from 2. To what should it be raised? That is extremely debated. That is a difficult question to ask and answer. It depends on lots of assumptions and whatever. It depends on what you want to control, how you want to control it, blah, blah, blah. And there will be disagreement there, right? So maybe Harvey said 3, we said in our paper 3.5, and you can disagree with that, right? You may say, no, it should be only 2.3 for instance. That I think is fine. I think, but the point I'm trying to make is, I think we need to raise the hurdle. That I think is a self-evident truth. All right, so now I have really like 3 more minutes, and then I'll stop my I'll stop whatever gibberish I'm talking about. So let's get back to the basic point that we are discussing. Are your anomalies in? Right. And I think what I'm trying to say right now is, I don't know how to answer that question. It depends on what does it mean? Are they there? What is there mean? Right? Are we talking about, are they replicable? Yes, they are replicable. I agree with you. Are they robust? Maybe not. Okay. Also, okay, we all know sometimes we sensationalize a little bit, not too much, we cannot, but we sometimes sensationalize a little bit our results. But let's be clear, nobody has ever claimed in any papers on this topic that there are no anomalies and or all published findings, all, I should have highlighted that, I should have underlined that, all published findings are false. Nobody has ever said that. Okay, so to go after some people, oh no, there are these things with Subra said P-stat of 6 or 7, they obviously cannot be false. Yeah, obviously they cannot be false. So who said that they are false? Right? You're picking a straw man and then attacking a straw man. Nobody said that. So I think the key and the most interesting question, to which I don't really have an answer, but I think the key question really is, so how many fraction-wise anomalies are there? I don't know. I don't know. How many anomalies are there? I mean, some. Right? Is it 0%? No. Is it 100%? No.
But you did claim in your paper the market is efficient after all. So you put this on.
No, it's okay, but I didn't say that. But in our paper, we just said that the hurdle needs to be raised from whatever 2.5, right? So how many are there? I don't know. This 35% number, really, it's just like I wanted to come up with a number, so I came up with the number 35%. I don't know. It's not like I've done an analysis and I'm giving you 35% because I crushed the number. So I did. It really is a number picked out of my head. So I'll end here, like 5 more seconds. I really don't know what we're really finding. I don't know what we're really doing. Right? Are my fellow panelists going to say, it's all 100%?
Okay, so I actually interpreted Subra's instructions pretty narrowly. I thought that we're supposed to debate whether p-hacking is a big problem or a small problem. And to me, that comes down to measuring p-hacking bias. I'll define mathematically what that means very soon. I think we have the same idea of what it means. And the thing about p-hacking bias is that you can actually measure it if you have big data. Big data means 100 or more published long-short strategies if you replicate them carefully. Or if you just data mine 10,000 or more, or several million like Amit does, data mine long-short strategies, you can actually measure this p-hacking bias. And I'm going to show that big data studies consistently find a small p-hacking bias, including Harvard-Lewin's in 2016. This very influential paper is actually kind of known for showing the opposite. Some studies also conclude that p-hacking effects are dominant in the same paper. And this contradiction that one paper can both find a small p-hacking bias and yet conclude that p-hacking effects are dominant, I think this is a symptom of what I'm going to call post-truth finance, and I'll define that in my opinion. So first, we need to define p-hacking. I agree, defining terms is really important here. I think you can define p-hacking in just 3 equations. P-hacking is just looking through n trading strategies or n ideas. They're indexed by I, and each strategy has a sample return, which is not what you really want, right? That's the past. What you really want is the expected return in that same sample. But the problem is that the sampling return is corrupted by the sampling error. And then p-hacking means you're not going to look at all n strategies like a good statistician. You're only going to look at the significant ones. So the strategy is only selected if its selected for examination if its sample return is more than 2 standard errors observed. This is a clear definition of what p-hacking is. And the problem with p-hacking is that if you select for large stuff on the left-hand side, you don't know if you're getting a big expected return or a big sampling error. Right? If it's all due to sampling error, then you really have nothing. And in fact, that is p-hacking bias. This expression right here, that's p-hacking bias. It's the expected sampling error conditional on that you have to the data to only look for the stuff that is ex post looking good. And the fact that the sampling error is positive conditional on selection, that'll mess up all your statistics. You can't all your the t hurdles don't make sense. The mean returns are biased. And that means that if you read a 10% return in a journal, the expected return has to be smaller than that. Now you can actually measure this p-hacking bias. You can use large-scale out-of-sample tests, you can use empirical-based shrinkage, and you can use false discovery rates. And all of this require data, many strategies to use for big data, and they all find p-hacking biases small. Okay, so actually here I disagree with Amit. We can have a discussion later. I think that the result by Jeff and David McLean is extremely relevant for p-hacking. Because, okay, so what they do is they replicate roughly 100 trading strategies, and here the context out of sample means after the original paper sample heads. And in the first few years out of sample, the returns are 75% there. Since sampling error is not persistent, it has to vanish immediately out of sample. So so this is a replication. So this result has been replicated many times. Here's another replication from my Oxford research encyclopedia entry. And we make it easy to interpret, so we normalize the in sample to 100. Out of sample, it's 74 basis points per month. So this cannot be sampling error. Right? The sampling error has to vanish. Not 1 month, not like 1 month out of sample, sampling error will vanish. It doesn't take 2 or 3 years for that to vanish. And so as a result of this, p-hacking bias is less than 25% of sample returns. And I think the debate can kind of end here. P-hacking bias is minor. Like the majority of that sample returns we look at are actually expected returns, not that sampling error. Of course, expected returns can change over time, especially if, as in the journals, read the journals carefully, they say that these predictability effects are due to mispricing. So you don't expect unexpected returns to last forever. So this is partially sampling error, but partially that is due to the decay of profitability of these strategies that people learn about them. And I want to mention that you can get similar out-of-sample returns just data mining. And I'll talk more about this Yang and Chen paper, which I think is a really underappreciated paper where they usually just pile through CompuStat like Amit does, and you can find out-of-sample returns. Okay, I said that the debate could kind of end there, but we want to do better because it's such an important topic. Because even with 100 predictors or social predictors, it's not pretty large standard error. That last part, that blue shot standard error, is pretty large. We can actually get a point estimate of the p-hacking bias by using empirical data. So this is a method that's borrowed from the genetics literature, basically. And this just applies Bayes' rule to say that if your sample return is due to these two components, you can use Bayes' rule to remove one of the components, and effectively you have to shrink the large sample returns for the plier. Okay, a quote plier. Your prior distribution of expected returns. Like what on earth could your prior distribution of expected returns be? It can be anything. Everyone has different pliers, but if you have big data, you can estimate this plier. Like a plier is just a distribution, right? It's like a normal distribution or a t-distribution. You can estimate that distribution, and if you do that, you find that p-hacking bias is only 10 to 15%. So for Jeff's 25% decay out of sample, half of that is p-hacking bias, half of that roughly is a change in expected returns. This is shown in my draft paper with Tom Zimmerman. He was kind of the key figure, which is way too late in the paper. But it shows if you use a naive prediction, you assume that you have an unbiased estimate. You have that 45-degree line, and then if you use Bayes' rule and estimate the prior, then you shrink towards zero. And you shrink more if you have a more noisy in-sample return, like this is the highest standard error, this is low standard error. There's more shrinkage here, but it's not that much shrinkage. And consistent with the idea that you shouldn't shrink so much, that p-hacking bias is small, we plot the out-of-sample returns. These circles are the returns after the original sample ends, but before publication, and they don't scatter around zero. Right? If it was really mostly p-hacking, you find these blue markers around here out of sample, but instead they line up like more or less around the empirical based prediction. And this is found also in an independent study by Jansen, Cleary, and JS. Okay, so that should really end the debate. I mean, we have out of sample returns, we have empirical based to get a point estimate of p-hacking bias. But because this is a really important topic, we also want real robustness, right? P-hacking is something that kind of haunts all of us. And as Amit said, it's something that we're definitely doing. And so we can look at false discovery rates. Right? So let's have nice clean definitions. A false discovery rate was defined by, or false discoveries were defined by Sorich in 1989. He says a discovery is a statistical finding, something that meets a statistical hurdle, like a t-stat widget in H, or some H. And something is false if it is null. A traditional null is an expected return of 0, or alpha of 0. And then the false discovery rate is just the rate of false discoveries. It's the share of these discoveries that are false. So it's like, suppose you have a t-stat of 4, you can still have expected return of 0. What's the probability of you getting into that mess? It's like a left tail risk. If you have big data, you can estimate this, and if you estimate this using big data, you consistently find that the false discovery rates defining discoveries as t-stats greater than 2, like the standard definition, that leads to a false discovery rate of 5 to 15%. This was shown in the working paper version of my RAPS paper. It showed in Jensen, Kelly, Peterson. I have like papers showing that you can do this not parametrically. That's one of the beauties of false discovery rates. And this is actually shown by the paper that kicked off this debate, Harvard Lewis in 2016. Although it's really, it's fair to say it's very good. All right, so let's see how it comes out of the paper. I think a lot of people know about Harvard Lewis t-stat hurdles. Not many people understand how that happens. So let's try to animate them in this chart here. In my view, the best estimates in the paper are in table 5. It's kind of back in the paper. These are the only point estimates of false discovery rates that account for p-hacking. And what they do is they estimate a model of how expected returns, that's what you really want is the expected return. That has no sampling error. How that relates to t-statistics, which have p-hacking bias and sampling error problems. And then they estimate a model of 2 kinds of factors. One has expected returns of 0, and the other has positive expected returns, like that. And to find false discoveries like Sorich does, let's define a false discovery as a null factor or expected return of 0, so it's the red stuff. And then for now, let's define the discovery as a t-stat greater than 3. So anything to the right, each of these is a different factor, and we're going to only call something a discovery if it's to the right of this. It's 1%. That's the famous 3.0 hurdle in Harvard Lewis. There's about 200 markers. To the right of here, there's 2 false ones. That's a really, really conservative or stringent way of defining discovery. Right? Normally, we don't need to be 99% sure. Normally, we could just be 95% sure. Right? And in fact, the false discovery rate literature is no different. And if you look at the textbook on this from Efron, he says like 5 to 10% is common. Benjamini has a recent review paper where he says the same thing. They use this in genetics or in functional MRI. So that begs the question, what happens if you use a more traditional false discovery rate? Well, if you define discoveries as t-stats greater than 2.3, so now draw the line at 2.3, everything to the right here is a discovery, then you get an FDR 5%. These are the false discoveries. And that's really not very different than the classical hurdle of 2.0. You don't have to, there's standard errors on this estimate, but based on this estimate, you don't have to raise the hurdle much if you think that what they do with genetics and functional MRI is relevant. And this cycle Harvard Lewis is lesser known 2.3 hurdle. It's in their table 5. They like to emphasize the FDR equals 1%. This 3.0 is what everyone knows about. But there's also this 2.3 hurdle there. This is not, as far as I can tell, it's not mentioned in the abstract intro or the main text, so you might have missed it. Now that begs the question then, what happens if you just do what we normally do? If you just use a classical hurdle of 1.96, well then the FDR is 9%. In other words, if you read a journal, you can be 91% sure, roughly speaking, that it's a true discovery, that the p-hacking bias does not make this result a false, a null result. In other words, p-hacking bias is at least relatively minor. And you might recall Harvard Lewis' message differently, just to make sure you don't feel like you're going crazy. Like, this is from their abstract. They say, we argue that most claimed research findings in financial economics, not just asset pricing, but financial economics, are likely false. Now that begs the question, where does that argument come from? And that's when we have to get into post-truth finance. Right, to understand post-truth finance, we need to have definition of significance and truth first. If you pick up a biostatistics textbook, you get these error tables that have 2 dimensions. One dimension is significance, and the other dimension is truth. They're not the same thing. They belong in different axes. And an error is when your significance test misses the truth. So if I see something significant, but in truth there's nothing there, then I made an error. Or if I don't see anything, but actually there is something there, then I've also made an error. But this is not what happens in post-truth finance. In post-truth finance, significance is the truth. Here, the truth is defined with the chosen test. Instead of nothing is there or something is there, you have the chosen test sees nothing, or the chosen test sees something. And then aggressive arguments show that the chosen test is superior. And then post-truth, your test, which is inferior, if your inferior test disagrees with the chosen test, you make a false discovery. And this is where the argument of hardly-losing comes from. You can really see it if you get to the conclusion. The conclusion in this paragraph really states it. It says, in medical research, the recognition of the multiple testing problem has led to the disturbing conclusion that most claimed research findings are false. Our analysis of factoring discoveries leads to the same conclusion. Many of the factors discovered in the field of finance are likely false discoveries. Of 296 published significant factors, 150 would be considered false discoveries under Bonferroni. Now, if you know how the Bonferroni test works, it doesn't traditionally measure the number of false discoveries. So traditionally, we would say 158 would be considered insignificant under Bonferroni. The post-truth, Hartley-Lewin's chosen significance test defines the truth. And so anything that's insignificant under Bonferroni is now false. So 53% of findings are false discoveries. And you might notice that that's barely most. The 53%, I'm not sure if I would get away with trying to put that into a book as most. And there are numbers in false discoveries that are less than 158 here. You know, there's in this list, there's 80 false discoveries under something they call PHY 5%. And so also in this paragraph, you have this aggressive language that most is the same as money, that 80 out of 296 is most. This is like, it's not nice to put a wall of text in front of people in the audience, so let's bring this to life with some animations. What the paragraph is saying is you take that previous estimation that they did, where they estimate using big data how to relate expected returns to t-statistics, and you add a Bonferroni 5% line, which is a very strict hurdle. And then now, instead of saying a false factor is a null factor where the expected return is 0, now call anything to the left false. You know, anything that's insignificant is false. Even stuff that has 100 basis points per month of expected returns. You know, it's t-stat is too low, even though you could have earned a huge risk premium on that. It's false. And remember that before in the paper, they're talking about this F3 equals 5% hurdle, which defines another significance test. And using this test, that implies many, not most, are false, because the hurdle is only 2.3. It's not that different than 2.0. But because many is the same as most in the post-truth logic, then you can ignore it. You can safely ignore it. And then you can conclude that most findings are likely false. And this is not just in Hartley-Lewin's. I think this is really the heart of the debate. This is where everything gets lost and confused. Okay, so on one side, you have Yang and Chen. They mine 18,000 strategies from CompuStat. They take basically anything in CompuStat and divide one variable by another, take first differences, take percentage first differences. And they do several tests, but the simplest one is they just divide the sample in half. Like before 87, they measure the returns, and look at the returns after 87. And the extreme decile average is 52 basis points per month alpha. And so they say any fundamental signals are significant. On the other side, you have Harvey and Liu in the JF who show exactly what went wrong with the inference in Yang. And what went wrong is if they apply their preferred methods to the Yang and data set, then the fraction of true strategies is 0.000 under something they call BY. And if you try to replicate this, you won't get something like that, but you could find something similar, like the fraction of significant strategies is found to be 0.000%. But post-truth, Harvey and Liu's chosen significance test defines the truth, and so Yang and Chen's discoveries are false, and they went wrong. And this is not just semantics, because traditionally different researchers seek to discover the same truth. Like we have different samples, we have different methods, we have different cultures, we're from different places, but we're all trying to find that truth. Right? That's the beauty of this diagram in a way. This is the very meaning of science. If I have to define science in just a few words, you can't use more than words than this. This is a reasonable definition. But post-truth, different researchers will end up seeking alignment with the chosen significance test. Because post-truth, you don't have nothing is there or something is there on the truth dimension. You have hardly lose test sees something, hardly lose test sees nothing. And so if I see something, or if Yang and Chen see something, or hardly lose test sees nothing, then they made a false discovery. And keep in mind that this test can be arbitrarily strict. You can really declare anything to be insignificant. And the bond test at 5% is extremely stringent test. It means that anything that passes this test, everything that passes this test is true with 95% probability, like 0% false discovery rate with 95% certainty. And that raises these questions like, which researcher gets to define the truth? And how will they be chosen? And that's not science. Okay, so I think I took us a bit of a far field from what Amit was talking about. Hopefully we can circle back to other issues like how what does multiple testing mean for statistical significance? Like how do we think about false discovery rates and updating t-stat hurdles? But to me, what's really the big issue that's like moving in the room that people I wish people would think more about is that the real debate is about whether we use big data methods which consistently find that p-active bias is minor. This is found in completely independent methods, out-of-sample tests, empirical base shrinkage, and false discovery rates using from independent teams. Or do we use post-truth methods where you say many is the same as most, and insignificance is truth, and so you can claim that p-active bias is a big problem. And as always, I post the replication code for this, and you can trace the code to the numbers and argue it to see really how this stuff works.
So let me start with p-hat. A lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound similar, especially some of the stuff that we have heard. Okay, so look, we have two sides. Okay, one side is the world is going to end. Journals are making huge mistakes, publishing especially cross-sectional predictability papers. Okay, so we have Harvey Vu and Zhu. Most claim research findings in financial economics are likely false. We just heard that. Cordia, Goyal, and Shuretto, 45% false positives. Harvey and Liu, our evidence is consistent with the idea that a large proportion of anomalies are false and reinforces the need to raise the thresholds for statistical significance. And look, I have heard that people have sent papers to journals, and the editor says, well, I believe this Harvey stuff, so we're going to increase the hurdle for papers that have the cross-sectional return predictability, okay? But Andrew Chen, thank you, okay? You take a deep breath. It's not that, okay? Chen and Zimmerman, for the typical anomaly, by the way, publishes this in the Review of Asset Pricing Studies, which is the #1 finance journal based on its impact factor, okay? Just want to make sure everybody knows that. For the typical anomaly, publication bias accounts for only 12% of the in-sample return. Okay, Andrew has a 2021 paper. If 10,000 researchers generated 8 factors every day, it takes hundreds of years. Okay, what is my take on p-hat? Okay, well, I had just look at the data. Okay, so there's a new paper, and I misspelled his name, and I thought that I fixed it. Maybe this is an old version. It's H-A-S-L-E-R. He's on the market this year. He's right here. And if you aren't interviewing him, you are wrong. Okay, so you should. So what he does is he looks at a very specific type of p-hat. So he's looking at the decisions that people make in sample. Do we include banks? Do we not include banks? NYSE firms or all traded firms? Firms with stock prices greater than 5 or all of them. Okay? And what he shows is that looking at all these decisions that researchers make, it increases the in-sample returns that you find. Okay? And if I did the calculation right, this explains about 40% of in-sample predictability. Okay? My paper with David, which people mentioned, thank you. we show that returns decrease 58% out of sample, okay? So both of these results tell me, yeah, there is some sort of statistical bias, but is it everything? No, okay? So we're finding returns go down 60%, okay? But some of this is from trading, okay? We find evidence that it is related to trading. Common sense tells us, okay, people learning about an anomaly and trading on it is going to reduce it. So again, do I think that there's some bias going on? Yeah, but does it change my view of the world? No. I mean, bravo. People that are writing these papers are producing results that are statistically significant out of sample. Good job. We should be accepting more of these papers. Not less, more. Okay? Okay, so let's publish more. And why isn't anyone crapping on corporate finance where you have some proprietary database that no one ever gets to see or look at? Almost all of these studies can be replicated with data that we all have access to. Okay. Now, there's something else, okay? And that's time series p-hat, okay? And, a lot of famous finance professors will run a regression of the market return on some right-hand side variables and say, oh, look, this is evidence of the risk premium, or we're measuring time variation in the risk premium. And I've seen no evidence whatsoever that it is related to risk. Okay, but we just say it because we're so confident in these models that we have invented that it's evidence of our risk premium. Now, is there p-hacking here? I think there are problems, but we do not hold these papers to the same scrutiny. One series, and we pretend, oh yeah, that's a true result. Okay, so let me mention Goyal and Welch, a great paper. It's been cited almost 5,000 times. It should be cited 10,000 times. They look at predictability of the market, not the market risk premium. And what they showed is if you update every month, use your estimate, there's no evidence that estimate's going to help you predict the market return going forward. Okay? So it seems to me there's no evidence from this paper that right-hand side variables are going to help us understand market returns going forward. But people do this all of the time. I have a paper with David McLean, Joe Engelberg, and Matt Ringenberg. So we look at these cross-sectional predictors that work in the cross-section, and we say often they're used to predict the market return. So you average them, do they predict the market return? Right? This is earnings to price ratios, dividend yields, share issues, etc. What do we find? Well, we find that if we consider the entire set that we're starting with, there's no prediction. Once we think about multiple hypothesis testing, there's no evidence that aggregating these cross-sectional variables is going to help you predict market returns going forward. Okay, so this is what I'm suspect of. Okay, I think we're looking at the wrong place. Why are we looking at the wrong place? Because it's the easiest to come up with data. Okay, this data, one series, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. Okay, now there are other attacks. So I'm here to try to defend cross-sectional predictability. Some people claim there is a replicability crisis. Okay, again, I think there is a replicability crisis when people publish papers where no one can look at the data. Okay, that's the crisis. Okay, David and I, we had like 97 anomalies. We couldn't get statistical significance. I forget for how many, 5, 6, 7. But we felt comfortable with it. I think it's because we didn't bust our butts enough on the last 7. Chen, Andrew, and Tom did. Okay, so if you go to the Open Asset Pricing website, which is an incredible service, they're able to replicate what we have found in journals 98% of the time. Great job, everybody. Okay, some claim return predictability is only important if a variable-based trading strategy is profitable. Okay? Now, my attitude is if you're going to hold me to some hedge fund trading strategy, pay me like I'm getting paid by a hedge fund. Okay? I'm an academic. I care about return predictability because it tells us something about the world, not because someone in a Ferrari can get rich off of it. Okay? Okay? So, no, we're scientists. It shouldn't be about developing strategies for other people. But even if it is, okay, we have to ask ourselves, first of all, who's the marginal trader? Okay? If I have a cross-sectional predictor, which tells me that someone can trade at 1 extra basis point by buying IBM, is that valuable? Well, it's not valuable if they're just going to go buy IBM for the fun of it. But if you're a mutual fund manager and flow comes in and you have to buy something, and you're going to choose between IBM with 1 basis points of alpha versus Caterpillar with 0, what are you going to do? Okay? That knowledge is valuable. Okay? And the other thing is, people that use this information are not looking at one factor in isolation. So if you look to market, momentum, okay, idiosyncratic volatility share, issuance, all of those things, you just imply maybe 1 basis point here, 1 basis point there, but you can add them together, and it can be valuable for someone who wants to use it for a trading strategy. Not that that is what we are here for.